Hey everyone, today we're looking at some of the darkest and most disturbing theories about Dead by Daylight's killers. Trapper. Trapper's mask is made out of his workers. Trapper's mask has always seemed strange to me, with it looking far too smooth and made of an uncertain type of bone. Therefore it could possibly be from his workers, who he trapped in the Macmillan mines. This is a simple theory that stems from this cosmetic, which mentions Trapper's whole look was originally created out of the bones of his workers, with it being the first prototype outcome. This cosmetic also makes mention of Trapper killing journalists who came onto the estate, presumably to expose the Macmillans' wrongdoings and poor working conditions. Over time, Evan could have collected many varying bones from different people, forming them eventually into his mask, which he shaped to fit his desired look, inspired originally from pieces he scavenged from his workers. Wraith. Wraith's weapon is capable of maintaining life. This theory comes about due to this cosmetic which holds the heart of Sally, the nurse, within Wraith's axe, the heart still beating. It suggests that possibly it's capable of maintaining or containing life. We know the entity is capable of holding life within parts of people, or even just objects. Here it would seem no different. In other descriptions, such as the bloodied spine blade, we also get some indication of a dark energy surging through the weapon. In this weapon, some of Sally's life force is trapped therefore. In Wraith's base weapon, the Azarov's axe, it's probable Azarov is trapped therefore too. It makes you wonder who else could be trapped within these weapons. Looking at these ones for example, which come from Autohaven Wreckers, it could have his victim's souls or life force within. And this one from Meteor Maker contains the clone Harvey, poor little guy. All of them living on within Wraith's weapons, trapped within. Billy. Billy may have done more damage than we think. This is a simple theory that Billy did a lot more damage on Coldwind than we think he did. Aside the deputies, his parents, and the animals, Billy may have killed quite a few more people, such as an auto repair shop worker, a hunter, a ranger, a highwayman, a miner, and a milkman. All of these people may have lived around the farm area, with Billy possibly exploring outward and actually causing a lot of damage to the surrounding area, returning their bodies to Coldwind and hiding them in the silo, which was later found to have bodies inside. Nurse. The entity caused Nurse's injuries. The nurse's state in the realm has always seemed rather odd. In her lore, we don't get any indication she was injured during her massacre of Crotus Pren, with many of the victims being found simply in their beds, and Sally found rocking on the floor. Sally was then taken away in an ambulance, which crashed, likely the entity's doing, by no surprise. However, it's always seemed strange as she seems honestly quite a bit more damaged, with her looking undead and maybe even burnt, as seen in other skins and by her blinking animation. It's highly possible therefore when she was brought into the realm she suffered some kind of entity burn alongside all her injuries from the ambulance crash, leaving her completely distorted from her prior self, which looked like this. This could also explain why she has all these burning particles around her, and her breathing seems stifled and damaged. Much like how when Maurice came to the realm, he got burnt and had to be given a third eye to see, potentially a similar thing happened with Nurse. The entity took her in quite sloppily, potentially. Huntress. The Huntress consumed the people she raided the villages of. This one is pretty straightforward and comes about from this cosmetic, which says, "Emerge from your slumber and pursue your prey. Tonight you shall feast on your enemies." We know she frequently went into villages, wiping them out, as well as soldiers who passed through the forest. Therefore, these being her enemies, it's highly likely she feasted on them. Maya's. Maya's sister Judith is still held within the first cut knife. Similar to other theories about souls or life force being held within items, this is a case where Judith may still live on within Maya's knife, with her blood said to stain it still, and another Maya's knife mentioning that the blood of victims still pulses within, as if they're trapped. Judith, based on Maya's add-ons, is one of his key sources of emotion, if he has any at all, and so it would make sense he would carry his last remnant of her with him, kept fresh by the entity. Hag. Hag and the villagers were all cursed by the entity. This one is based largely off of a certain cosmetic that makes mention that Hag requires blood in order to stop herself from petrifying. From here it makes you wonder if this wasn't something just unique to Hag and her own state, but also the villagers that captured Lisa in her lore. It would make more sense, honestly, why there was this hidden secret village who consumed people. To further this, it's quite possible the entity assures Lisa's loyalty by means of keeping her close to petrification. She looks very withered down in the realm and only gets a few drops of blood if she hits a survivor, and a much fuller meal, shall we say, with Amori, possibly another manipulation tactic, constantly keeping her on the edge of death to make her loyal. Doctor cannot feel due to extensively damaging his body with his experiments. This one is quite simplistic, but it's the idea that Doctor has essentially destroyed his body and nervous system due to his extensive electroshock therapy experiments he has done on it, such as just plugging electrodes directly into his brain and stuff. Also evidenced by things like him holding this burning hot rod without even flinching, or even with these very spiky bats. It'd also explain how he's able to withstand the pain of bug eggs hatching underneath his skin, which is just, Bubba. Bubba makes the survivor pudding. This is one I've mentioned before, but is one I like. It's the idea that when Bubba came to the realm, he brought along with him the survivor pudding, almost as a friendly offering toward the entity and the other killers, with Bubba releasing just a month or so after the pudding was added. He's of course no cook either, which is why he would instead opt for a pudding, which looks very messy and isn't fooling anyone for its contents. So it seems plausible Bubba made it. It's not going to be the award-winning chili, but Bubba can make a messy pudding. Freddy killed Nancy before coming to the realm. This one is really dark, but I do think it makes sense. Spoilers for A Nightmare on Elm Street, but at the end of the film, Freddy appears back from the dead at Nancy's house and kills her mother in front of her. From here we can assume he then continued on, with these events preceding Quentin's own lore in Dead by Daylight. Freddy's prestige cosmetic mentions it's covered in his prey's blood, potentially Nancy therefore. He killed her, came for Quentin, but the entity took them both before he could finish him. In Freddy's original power too, Nancy's face appears trapped within his hand, suggesting she was killed. Her face also appears throughout the Springwood map on portraits, suggesting this also, with the realms being constructed from the characters' minds. Pig. The pig mask is a part of Amanda. This is a theory that's relatively simple, but it's the idea that Pig's mask has become a physical part of her in the realm. The entity doesn't seem to quite understand people after all, and so when it comes to Amanda, I don't think it does either. It gives her inhuman features after all, such as enabling her to literally roar in the realm, despite this just being a sound effect in the Saw films. Therefore it seems likely it would fuse the actual pig head mask onto her too. Her blighted skin does suggest this also, with it being mutated alongside her, and sprouting an additional head, as if it too is alive. Clown sold his soul to what he thought was the devil. This one is pretty simple, and there's not much evidence granted, but it does make sense. Early into Clown's life and killing days, he sold his soul to what he thought was the devil, or some kind of demon, when in reality it was the entity granting him freedom and the ability to get away with his crimes in exchange for later becoming its servant in the trials. Clown has a cosmetic with this 6 on his head, with it being named Thrice Greatest, a 666 which he draws on his head. It's likely Clown could easily mistake the entity for some kind of demon or devil after all. This would also explain why he is so soulless and uncaring for humanity, aside wanting fingers, and why in the realm his eyes are these dark voids, despite him simply being human before. Spirit. Rin is literally split within herself. This is the theory that inside of Rin, the spirit are actually two people, Rin and the spirit. The two of them are not actually one of the same, but are simply sharing the same body, and fighting for control. A good illustration of this is with the Junji Ito skin. Whilst this skin displays a completely different character to Rin, with it being Tomi, it still acts as a good illustration for the kind of thing Rin may be feeling, a forcible split between two sides or faces, both fighting for dominance in the trials, the human side and the vengeful spirit side. Looking at regular spirit, we can see that from time to time she switches from incredibly angry, shrieking out, and then suddenly becomes sad and solemn. It's bizarre. It's possible therefore when she made her oath with the entity in exchange for revenge, she did not feel entirely committed. Part of her simply wanting peace and the other wanting that revenge, leading to an inner split within her where part of her soul remained Rin and the other part was transformed into a vengeful spirit. This likely just adds more emotion to the trials too, with Spirit literally fighting within herself constantly. Legion. The Legion summoned Vecna to the realm. I don't remember exactly where I heard this one, but I believe it was one of you, so let me know in the comments if you've ever mentioned this to me, because I definitely didn't come up with it. This is the theory that Legion are actually responsible for Vecna's presence in the realm by playing D&D, and possibly even in a campaign they were playing to defeat Vecna, and in doing so they summoned Vecna to the realm through the emotions of their success of defeating him. It's known Legion play D&D with all members mentioned in a skin, telling a story of them defeating an evil lord. Vecna's summoning could possibly be down to Susie specifically too, with her getting angry at Joey for gloating about Susie's failure to kill the lord, with her character then going and stabbing Joey's, leaving even Frank and Julie stunned, which is quite impressive. This emotion could all be a means to summon Vecna, or the memory of it at least. I think that's quite interesting, quite a dark theory that, Legion, of all people, are responsible for Vecna, the most powerful of the killers to be in the realm. Plague. The Plague is responsible for the existence of the Black Veil. This is a theory we've discussed a lot before, but it's a great one that gives a lot more depth to Plague, I think, and the consequences of serving the entity. It goes that the religion Adiris followed and promoted for so many years ended up becoming the Black Veil after she was taken, with her of course being a worshipper of the entity in reality. It may have been her final pilgrimage and disappearance that ended up and caused their formation. The amount of damage the Black Veil has done really does put a dark spin on Adiris' life and history if she were its cause, with her so heavily devoted and promoting it. The way the Black Veil view the realm as a place of salvation would surely suggest they have a fanatical view toward it, much like Adiris did too. Ghostface chose to go to the realm and maybe even summoned the entity himself. This one comes down to the fact that the Ghostface seems to love it in the realm, but he also seemed aware of people inside of it. For one, he knew of Trapper before the realm, and even looked up to him a lot. It begs the question of if he may have actively tried to get in. There's a cosmetic that also sort of suggests this, saying not content to merely stalk those in their homes, he took to the trials to track and kill his victims. Almost as if he was the one who made that choice, and not the entity by taking him. He decided, oh, I want to go to the trials. Demogorgon. Demogorgon misses home. This one is sort of more of just a guess, I suppose. Demogorgon likely misses home. It spends all its time in the realm, and when it tries to enter the Upside Down, it's just an empty void. It tries to scream out, but nothing hears it. It's completely out of its natural habitat, forced to act strangely and hook survivors, instead of just hunting them. It's probably just really confused and missing home. It's actually quite dark when you see it in the sense of the entity literally just grabbing it and twisting it against its own nature just to serve it. Poor Demo. Oni. Oni killed Akito's friend and her family. This is another we've covered before, but within the Akito's Crutch add-on, we learn of Akito falling from a tree, who's Oni's son, and Kazan went and punished Akito's friend for doing this, even though it wasn't her fault. When it comes to Oni though, we can assume punishment was quite extreme, and so he likely even killed his son's friend and her family, with some believing he could have done something far worse. We know he cared quite intensely about his image, and his son after all will be his legacy, which means this event may have even been a key one that led to his massacre across Japan too, which just makes it even darker, I think. This could have been the trigger moment. Deathslinger. What happened to Deathslinger's leg? This is more of an open-ended theory with quite a few different answers. One could be that he injured it with use of one of his own contraptions, possibly even his spear gun. Another could be that it was damaged upon entering the realm, burned similar to Maurice, leaving it damaged as he doesn't seem to have had it prior to the realm. The other possibility is that it could be a self-inflicting type of pain, a device he attached to himself almost as punishment for the guilt he was feeling. This outfit depicts Deathslinger's own devices being used on himself in a dream, and one of them is attached to his leg. That would certainly be a pretty dark backstory to it. His whole limp is caused by some kind of self-punishment for his guilt he feels. Pyramid Head. Pyramid Head was deceived by the entity. It always seems strange to me that Pyramid Head served the entity so willingly and accepted its invitation, as none of the survivors are much like James in the sense that they're guilty of something, or not to the extent of needing Pyramid Head to come and hunt and stalk them. Therefore it seems likely the entity did deceive Pyramid Head in some way, possibly even altering his vision to see the survivors differently, or simply telling him a story that they are far more guilty. Of course we wouldn't be able to know or confirm that though because of the hulking pyramid on his head. We can't see if there's a difference in his eye colour, for example, like we can with other killers. I do think it sort of makes sense though. I think the most likely thing is he was just told a different story. He was told these were guilty people, deserving of punishment. Blight. Blight has hundreds of living people inside of him. Part of Blight's serum contains the soul chemical, which is described as a chemical squeezed from the pineal gland of a survivor. The pineal gland often associated with the opening of your third eye, a new understanding of things. This chemical could cause the deceased survivors to live on within Blight, with many strange faces appearing across his skins and peering out from within, as if they are living on. The other possibility is that the use of the serum is causing a connection to the other Blights from the multiverse or omniverse to all roll and combine into one, causing this ultimate or true Blight look too. This could also be why other blighted versions of killers become their true or prime version selves. Either way, I think it's clear that some other living being exists within the Blight. He's quite literally injecting himself with souls potentially, and so he's sprouting many consciousnesses within him. Twins. Each time Victor dies, Charlotte's soul slowly crumbles. This is the idea that due to Victor being a part of Charlotte, constructed from her memories and physical body by the entity, that each time he gets kicked in the trials, similar to survivors who are sacrificed, Charlotte slowly gets dimmer and her life force is whittled down. This is pretty dark due to the fact that this would mean she's dimming twice as fast, having the experience of both sides in a sense, instead of just the killer one, experiencing the equivalent of multiple deaths within a single trial through Victor, whilst also having to play the killer role. Trickster and Skull Merchant were friends. This was from One of You that we covered earlier this year. It's the idea that before the realm and the trials, both Trickster and Merchant knew one another, and maybe even met up whilst Trickster was at his concert in Brazil. This mask is said to be a custom-made one and features a very similar style to all of Merchant's, with it also having the similar bling too. This was the same one he wore for his Brazil concert too, which is where Merchant is from, suggesting she may have been the one to have made it. The idea of them knowing one another and devising plans pre-realm is a pretty terrifying thought. Nemesis. Blighted Nemesis is constantly mutating. This one is quite simple, but it's the idea that due to the blighted Nemesis getting perpetually pumped with the blighted serum, his body is persistently mutating and trying to keep up with the serum's changes. It likely keeps him in incredible pain, with his mutation abilities also stunted by the entity, leaving his body constantly changing, with nothing to be done about it. This does likely also make him one of the strongest characters in the realm in this state though too. Imagine if he was unbound, the serum would just constantly evolve him and he would be constantly mutating to fit it. Pinhead. Pinhead sacrificed the other Cenobites to please the entity. This is largely based on the fact that Pinhead has parts of the other Cenobites seen in the Hellraiser film in the realm as add-ons, parts too which seem to hint toward their deaths. For example, the shattered lens was not shattered when Butterball was wearing it, suggesting Pinhead could have made a deal of some kind to sacrifice the others to satiate his own desires for pleasure or pain, or simply to survive under entity threat. Artist. Artist is trying to call for help in the lobby. This one just seems really tragic, but does align. After Artist got her tongue cut out, she's unable to verbally communicate aside a few high-pitched screeches. Carmina was never a bad person before the realm, and she was overcome with sadness and grief upon coming to the realm. When inside it, therefore, it's likely she's not fully on board, even when transformed. Her shrieks in the lobby, therefore, toward the player, could be her trying to communicate and ask for help or some salvation. Why else would she just be randomly shrieking after all? Sadako. The Blight serum regenerated Sadako's body. This one's pretty dark and disturbing, but does make sense I think. In this blighted look, it seems likely that it's actually her decomposed body post-Blight injection, as in this one injected with Blight. There are some indicators such as her left side arm, shoulder, and face all being heavily blighted, these being the same points that were skeletal before. She's also covered in these thick vines and moss or growths, suggesting prior she would have been in a pretty decomposed state. It's possible therefore that this is her regenerated from her decomposed body. Potentially that's how Blight managed to get close. He found Sadako's body and injected that with the Blight, the only way he could safely do it. After all, the serum is known to resurrect people as well. I think it's resurrected a rat, but who knows, it could probably do a human. Dredge. Dredge is far more prolific than we realize. This is a nice and simple one. Dredge has been around and has consumed a lot more than we realize, seen simply by looking at its cosmetics that go back as far as ancient Greek times. We see a number of different things it's consumed, as well as all of the various things poking out of it. We really have no idea the true extent of this creature, and so this theory is simply that it's far worse than we can even imagine. If it is a mini entity like many believe, then even at this size it's caused horrific amounts of damage, which in turn just makes the entity even worse. Wesker. Wesker is experimenting on the survivors. Similar to how we have Doctor and the mention of his experiments in the lore, such as him getting a submarine full of people, it seems quite possible Wesker is doing the same, especially with how intact he is. He must be getting some sort of benefit from the entity. Potentially this is why Wesker is so happy to be in the realm, despite his plans being ruined, because the entity is letting him live out his dream in some other way, releasing Ouroboros out into one of the entity's many consumed realms perhaps. Wesker could be terrorizing many other worlds and we don't even know. Night. The guards all died and aren't in the realm. Similar to the theory about Pinhead, this seems like a similar situation, only it probably wasn't Night's choice this time. At the point of being taken, everything about this event seems odd, with Night. It never mentions Night dying, yet in the realm he's undead, and so are all of his guards, with them being much more dead and decomposed. It seems likely therefore that they did all actually die, and the Knight was the only true one to be taken, with their souls instead imbued into the summoning flag, much like how the entity traps souls or life force into different objects. It seems likely it did this with the 3 guards, keeping only the basic parts of them alive. Just a generally messed up situation there. Skull Merchant. Skull Merchant ended the world. This one is admittedly a stretch, and largely just off of a singular cosmetic that depicts a sort of post-apocalyptic look, but I do think it's plausible. In the Omniverse, after all, there's somewhere where this could have happened. The outfit is described as coming from one of her father's early manga concepts, and another part mentions how she built her world around it, suggesting she may have destroyed her world, causing some sort of apocalypse by means of her gutting and scrapping of companies, maybe to the point of substantial power, where she could do whatever she pleased. Leave it to Merchant, after all, to go all the way in making her father's mangas come to life. That's what she's all about, so I think a universe where she ended the world is actually pretty possible. Singularity. Singularity is capable of time travel. This is a bit of a silly one admittedly too, but it's a disturbing thought to have, considering the damage he could potentially do if this were possible. Hux is from the future and has technology out of our understanding, so it's plausible with his intelligence being beyond that of humanity. If we look at this rather odd skin, where he's stuck in the frame of an arcade machine, it's described as brand new, despite them being described as antiquated circuits and electronics, presumably from around the 70s or 80s, which suggests he somehow found himself in this time. So there's a possibility he created some sort of time machine to go back and destroy humanity, whilst it was far weaker technologically, which would make a lot of sense after all. He's able to teleport and reconstruct himself, so possibly he was able to do this by going back in time somehow, manifesting himself into an arcade machine. Xenomorph. The Xenomorphs are expanding in the realm. In this Jake cosmetic we get reference to a strange encounter within the wider realm where Jake is watching a beast of some kind drink from a stream. It then sees him and he blacks out. When he awakes, his chest bursts open, much like the chest bursters from Alien, suggesting the Xenomorphs are actually slowly expanding within the realm, using the survivors even sometimes as hosts whenever they decide to leave the campfire. Chucky. Andy grew up in the realm and even partook in the trials. When Chucky comes to the realm, he's in the middle of chasing Andy, who at this time is just a young boy. This is more than likely an entity illusion, but if it's not, it would mean Andy too would be in the realm. So where is he? Well, it could be that due to the entity's realm having a strange relationship with time, that Andy has actually been in the realm for a long time by the time Chucky arrives after following him. Andy could have been in the realm for years, growing up and then becoming a part of the trials, only to eventually fall to the void, where he's now remembered only for his old teachable perk, Small Game, where his final words of nope are recorded, his comment toward Chucky ever catching him. Unknown. There's more unknowns. Unknown's lore is strange, and we never really get a good understanding or even close to an understanding of what Unknown is, especially as most of the lore doesn't even focus on Unknown's own killings, but instead the entities. It's a creature, however, that does appear to originate from the realm, or potentially manifested from it in some capacity, through the emotions created around the Greenville fracture. Therefore, it's quite likely that other Unknowns exist too. There are many strange creatures in the entities realm, many of which have tentacles as well, which is what the Unknown seems to be within the skin suit. It seems quite possible, therefore, that other Unknowns exist, and sometimes escape from the fog. As a side theory too, I really like the one that Unknown's base cosmetic is Dwight from another universe, a victim of the Unknown. That one's pretty creepy. Vecna. Vecna has managed to break the entity's magic. Vecna's cosmetic, the Decaying King, no longer has a mark of negation like his others do. He vowed when entering the realm that he'd one day learn its secrets and even overthrow the entity. Possibly with this sneaky removal of the mark that was once nerfing him, he's getting one step closer, which is pretty terrifying. Dracula. Dracula brought more to the realm than himself. This one is just partially true, with him also bringing along his castle, of course, which we see in every trial he's in, aside with license maps. But what else could Dracula have brought? I think it's likely he brought other monsters and minions he's had, with one being hinted at in an add-on, Medusa. It's said to just be a memento of her, but this doesn't mean she's entirely gone. With that whole castle, surely he brought along some other minions or creatures to the realm. A grave threat and a scary thought for any of the survivors around the campfire. Houndmaster. Houndmaster takes fingers for clown. This one is already quite widely spread, but it's based on a strange quote Houndmaster says about taking fingers for a pal when she marries. It suggests she may know Clown, the finger guy, giving it to him as a gift. This wouldn't have been possible before the realm, so possibly they formed a twisted friendship within it, with Portia supplying Clown with fingers. Let me know any dark or disturbing theories you have too down below. Thanks, and goodbye.